This podcast is brought to you by the creators of Emmy Award-winning Rising Phoenix.
Supported by global partners Adidas and Procter & Gamble, the proud makers of Oral-B, Pampers, and Gillette. Hi, my name is Matt Stutzman. I'm a four-time Paralympian and silver medalist.
And I'm four-time Olympic gold medalist Michael Johnson.
Welcome to our podcast, Rising Phoenix. What does it take?
Where we'll introduce you to some of the world's greatest Paralympians.
Kind of like me.
Kind of like you, Matt. You'll hear about their life stories, what it takes to get this far, and their hopes for Paris 2024 and beyond.
Michael, you are famous because you competed at the Olympics and the Summer Games. Was there ever a sport that you were like, for the Winter Games, you're like, you know what, I think that's something I want to try?
Actually, Matt, I'm famous for lots of things.
That is true. That is true.
But not Winter Olympics, no. You know what? There's a trend. There's been a trend throughout the history of Summer Olympic sprinters sort of transitioning to winter and doing bobsled. Edwin Moses, for example, famous 400-meter hurler, became an Olympic bobsledder. But it's not something I ever wanted to do. Once I was done with my Olympic career, I was ready to move on to the next phase of my life and move away from sport as an athlete. So yeah, never really fancied any winter sports.
With your speed, I feel like you could have won some medals pushing the bobsled. Like, I feel like you would probably have dominated that too.
Well, the other problem is bobsled is a team sport, and I'm not a good team sport athlete, as you've realized with you and I teaming up with them.
You're a good team player.
Well, thank you, Matt. What about you?
So I have always thought that if I were to do a winter sport, it would be downhill skiing, because it's kind of like an individual sport where I can kind of control, but then you get to go fast. And for me, I like to go fast, so that's kind of where, or the one where you ramp and then you like are in the air for like 100 meters.
Yeah,
that would be pretty cool too.
Yeah, don't do it if you don't know the name of it. Not content with being a gold medal winning para rower, Birgit Skarstein is an amazing cross-country para skier, and she joins us from her home in Oslo now. Birgit, welcome to Rising Phoenix. What does it take? Hello, it's good to see you.
Hello, nice to see you guys.
Hello. Looks like you are having a great day. In fact, I'm just going to ask you about it because I think you just got back from a Paralympic training session. Is that correct?
That is right. Yeah, I just came home from a rowing session in the morning, and then I've been erging on a ski erg in the afternoon.
So you just did a 2-a-day, basically, and you're still that happy? That's amazing.
Maybe that's why I'm happy, you know.
What does like a session like that entail?
Well, today in the morning we had competition intervals, which was competition speed intervals on the water in the boat, and then we had threshold intervals in the afternoon on the ski erg, and then we're doing biking in the evening. So it's about endurance, which is, a lot of rowing is endurance, but it's also power, it's strength and technique.
So you compete in PR1 single sculls. What does that mean? Explain what that is.
Well, the PR1, it's was used to be called arms and shoulders, which is athletes predominantly rowing with their arms and shoulders. And then we have another class, which is called PR2, which used to be the arm and trunk. And then there's a PR3, which is arms, trunks, and legs. So that's the three categories that we have in rowing. And it means it's a single scull because each category is a different boat type. So we have a single scull, and then the PR2 is a double scull, and the PR3 is a 4.
I feel like I can pretty much do any sport. However, when you talk about the classifications, none of them refer to using your legs to row. So, like, would this be something like this? Probably won't work for me, really, would it?
Actually, rowing is a little bit hard if you don't have arms. Even though, an ordinary stroke is like 70% legs, but you still need your arms to drive the stroke.
Probably not.
You could be a really great cox, because the cox, they need to talk and push the others, and that could be your amazing job.
That's my way into rowing right there. Okay, so after school, you spent some time in Southeast Asia where you injured your foot. How did that lead into being in a wheelchair?
Well, as you said, I was living in Southeast Asia and I injured my foot while there. So I got a bacteria into that foot, which was like a flesh-eating kind of bacteria. So it was eating my foot from the inside. So they needed to repair it, by moving muscles and skin and even bone from other parts of the body. And we worked with that for quite a while. It took, I guess, 10 months until they were able to mend everything back together. And then I was just having a final surgery where we were moving a little piece of bone from my hip and down into the leg because it was still missing some bone in my leg. And I got an epidural anesthesia. You know epidural?
Yep.
Yeah, I got one of those, and they hit it wrong. So they hit the spinal cord. So when I woke up from that surgery, I had a spinal cord injury.
How old were you then?
I was 20 years old. So I was quite young.
Yeah.
Even though I felt like I was an adult, I now understand I was really young.
Yeah.
But I think in a way that was also an advantage because I didn't know, what I was getting into. I didn't have any references on what it would be to have a spinal cord injury, and I was quite active, and strong and very energetic. So I kind of felt like, okay, let's take it on. Let's see what we can do out of it.
Yeah, I mean, so I read where, like many people would have been devastated, obviously, with something like that. But I read where when you were laying in hospital, you made a gratitude list. I mean, what? Just explain sort of the mindset you were in at that moment to do that in that moment, and then what was on the gratitude list.
My injury is about the belly button, so in the middle of my belly. And that means that you lose your hip, you lose the bottom part of your back and your belly, and that's a lot of stabilization in that. So suddenly, I was just having a hard time sitting up straight. I was having a hard time moving because I was very heavy. And it was hard to forget that you had an injury because it was there all the time. So, all the doctors, everyone that visited me, all my friends and family, everyone that went by my room were talking about these legs that didn't work. And I felt like I was much more than that, that I could still use the rest of my body that wasn't injured. So I just wrote this list that said, I'm lucky to have and two hands, 2 arms, strong arms. I can hear, I can talk, I can see, I can smell, I can think, I can reason. I have great friends and family. I have an education, I was working on, a really, lots of opportunities. I also was a small list of what I didn't have, like cancer or any other illness I could think of, which was worse than being paralyzed. And in the end, I just wrote, so don't complain and keep on going. You can do it. And I just put it on top of my bed, on the wall. So it would be the first thing that everyone saw when they came in to visit, and it would also be the first thing I would see when I came into the room to remember. And I think that it's just so easy to get stuck into things that you can feel the most or see the most, to also remember the things that is not so obvious, maybe, or the things that are still unchanged, even though it feels like the world is upside down. It was important to me to hold on to what opportunities were still there.
So it sounds like, you went through this life-changing experience, but you didn't really let that change your approach on life.
But the thing with a spinal cord injury, at least how I felt it, was that it was just so truly my body that was injured. It wasn't me. I was still the same person. I still had the same dreams and visions, and also a lot of this very same characteristics and traits. So it was just about how to adapt my life to fit the wheelchair into my life rather than fitting my life into the wheelchair, if that makes sense.
Sound like you really grasped every opportunity that was presented to you. I mean, you were you were on a reality TV show, right? Like that is amazing. Can I hear a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that was a year after I was injured. They were casting for this television show, which was a reality where they had 11 people with different kind of disabilities. That was taken into the woods to the border to Sweden, between Norway and Sweden. And we had to go 600 kilometers from the border and through a forest and paddle and canoe and horseback ride and go with this crazy four-wheel or wheelchair and also crawl on the butt, on the top of the mountain. And then everyone had different kind of disabilities or abilities, if you like. One of them couldn't see, one of them couldn't hear. One of them didn't have arms. Another one didn't have legs. Some had like really poor balance. So we all had different kind of abilities, and we had to learn how to figure things out together. Like, for example, I'd be really good at lighting fires, like bonfires. I'd be really good at, rolling out things to sleep in. I would be good at, pushing them forward mentally. But I was really bad at carry heavy stuff. And I was really
Mm-hmm.
bad at climbing, So then I needed help for some things and I could help others and other things. And what it made us do was to acknowledge our weaknesses because we had to talk about them. Because if not, we couldn't identify them because everything, you couldn't see everything, right? Some of them were invisible. And we have to talk about our strengths so that we could help out. But the issue for us was that it was all 11 really wanted to help everyone else and no one wanted to receive help. So for us, the hardest part was actually just to be vulnerable and honest, with both ourselves and each other, and to work together as a team. And it might be easy to be like, okay, but you can figure out that. But add to it that we were out for 31 days and it was raining for 28 of them. And we didn't see anyone but each other. And we were so far out. So, and we had no clue. We got up in the morning and we didn't know whether we was going to be walking for 8 hours or 15 hours. We didn't know. We didn't know whether we were going to kayak or whether we were going to go horseback riding or crawling in the dirt. We didn't know where the next break was. So it was quite a mental challenge, but it was very interesting.
I'm wondering if it was that sort of inspired you, because then you became a Paralympian after that. I'm just wondering if that's, how did you get into becoming a Paralympian?
Well, I remember really well, actually, when I was in hospital, all the doctors said, oh, you're so lucky, you're 20 years old, you're fit, you have a lot of experience by doing sports in your childhood and youth. You'll be a great Paralympian. And I was just thinking, no, I just want to get back to my studies, get a degree, get a job, have a family life, have friends, I just want to have a normal life. And then I started working part-time as I was studying with the Norwegian Olympic and Paralympic Confederation of Sports. And I was working politically with them. And they took me to London, to the Paralympic Games in London. And I think that was the first time I really realized that Paralympics was amazing. It was like, I can't really explain it. It was just such a powerful moment to me when I was there and just, sitting, watching. It was actually track and field, one of the sports that we were watching, and feeling the energy from the crowd and seeing these amazing athletes performing there. It was like it's been talked about like the mini Olympics, and that was when I realized that it's just not. It's in some way just greater, and not at all an underdog in the performance. It's just so hard. It's just so impressive. It's so inspiring and cool. You know, you'd see people do things that you didn't think was possible, and they would do it, you know, better than you'd ever seen anyone do it. I think that, you know, performance part of the Paralympic Games was really threw me off. And I realized this is really, really cool. And I also realized that what we're seeing in the field of play is a picture of the society that I believe in and that I thrive for. A society, you know, where we're all reckoned for what we are and what we can do and who we are, and not what we cannot do. It's not what you cannot do that matters. It's what you can do, what you can perform, what you can deliver. And it's just a positive way of seeing diversity.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is. It's awesome.
My first games was London.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, how did you see it as an athlete?
It was a surreal moment. If I always tell people I've had arms out to pinch myself, right? Because I was like, I can't believe I'm here representing the United States and being a part of this awesome. At that time, it was like, you know, the sporting event, and then it quickly turned into me about what the movement was really about. So it kind of makes me feel a little bit lazy, to be honest, because I only compete in the summer games, and you were like, I love the summer games so much, but now that that's over, I think I should get into something different, like a winter sport. So, like, how do the two sports differ for you, whether it's training or mentally, between the summer games and the winter games?
Oh, it's quite different to do the Nordic skiing in the winter and the rowing in December. And I think that, you know, the only way to do it, at least in my experience, is that you have to train both all year. But you have to train with a variety anyways when you're only exercising with your upper body, because you need to be able to train lots of hours, you know, without getting injuries. So it was just about making sure that I was very aware how I was using the different sports. And you also have different kind of muscle groups that you use. So there's lots of more long distance skiing, while in rowing there's a little bit more high intensity training. So it's nice to combine them, because then you can get the best out of both.
The question I had for you with the skiing is, how do you keep your lungs from freezing up? Because you know what I mean? Like, you're going hard in the winter, and I was always told that there is a chance that they could freeze up. Is that true?
Yeah, you can get injuries. Lots of winter athletes have injuries on their lungs because of, you know, cold.
Wow.
So we try to make sure we don't train when it's too cold. Like if it's minus 30 degrees Celsius, we try to rather train inside. If it's like minus 25, 26, then you go slow. You don't do intervals. And you have this cold mask. So you have a mask like this, and you breathe through the mask when you're outside, just to preserve my lungs, to not, you know, make them freeze up.
Wow.
And your face kind of freezes up a little bit. So you have to have this cold cream you can put on your face so it doesn't freeze. And your nose freezes up. So you have to like switch it.
You're making me want to be a winter athlete.
Making me now I realize why
It's
I'm
really
not
nice.
a Winter Olympian. Yeah, I know why I'm not a Winter Olympian.
But you know, everything when you're and you can't stop, you know, because you sweat when you're training, and if you stop, you freeze right away. So you have to keep on going. But the good part of it is that you know you can be out in the mountains, and there's only you, because no one else wants to go out, and it's really nice with stars. And then you have the northern lights, you know, covering up the sky, and then it's all worth it.
That's cool.
So when the Tokyo Olympics were postponed, you signed up for the Norwegian version of Dancing with the Stars, right? I was going to ask you why you did that, but I think I know at this point it was just another challenge, because that's just what you do, right? So tell us about that experience.
You know, they'd been asking for a while if I could take part of the program, and my thinking it's been, you know, as long as I'm an athlete, it's just not possible to sign on for a TV show for such a long time. But then everything was canceled in COVID, like it was nothing. Suddenly, we had a whole season with no competition, and we obviously weren't traveling anywhere. So we were just stuck. And almost every time when I've been out dancing with my friends, someone has come up to me and said, "Can I take a picture of you dancing? Because I didn't know people in a wheelchair could dance." Or I have a friend or an aunt or a colleague that doesn't want to dance because they have something which is different and they don't feel like they have a dancing body. So I figured, when this challenge came up, the timing was really good because I could actually do that as my competition instead of rowing. And then I could, in a very effective way, show the whole country that, of course, you can dance. Every body is a dance body. You just do it in a different way. And I was also a little bit tired of people telling, this is for you, or this isn't for you, or you can't do this. So in a way, they were defining what I could or could not do based on their own prejudice. So I figured, if I just do this and I show them, kind of like London did with me, like, this is very cool. It's not like it's a almost cool dance, but it is actually really cool moves. Then maybe I could change people's view, or we could change people's view, or what is proper dancing, what is dancing, and what is actually possible, even though you haven't seen it.
Egor Filipenko.
8.
Merete Linjære.
8.
Tore Pettersson.
10.
Matt, would you do it? Would you do Dancing with the Stars?
I'm a bad dancer. And when you got to put your hand over your head and then twirl around?
You don't have to do that.
I can't do that.
Sure you can. You can figure it out.
You
figure
could
out
do really
everything.
good in step dance.
I feel like I'm good with my feet, but I just am not so good dancing. I step on too many feet. Yeah, it's just not good. It's not good. It's not good. However, I guess if the show called and said they wanted me on it, I would probably consider it for about 1 minute.
Yeah, they've called me multiple times, and it's like that. I just don't think that would be fun for me. Just the whole practice, it's a lot of practice, and I was like, I just don't think I'd do well with the practice. I'd want to just show up for the final, and I would bomb. I would bomb because I haven't practiced, and I'd be like, I think I'll just show up for the final and just come out here and see if I can just wing it, right?
I think you would be a good dancer.
I think I do okay, but I just think the practice is what I just every time they call, I'm like, no.
The dancers in our production, at least, said we'd really like to have sporting people because, they know how to work hard and they're structured enough and they're goal oriented. So they set a goal and then they work for it and they follow through. And I think you have that. If not,
I have
you
it.
wouldn't have been.
I just didn't want to do it for dancing. I just didn't want to do it for dancing. For running, absolutely. For dancing, no. You kind of like that. You do that risk reward. You're like, oh, I want this. I'm willing to do the work for it. And then you're like, yeah, I don't want that bad enough to do all of this work because I already know what kind of work it's going to be. So nope, no dancing for
What if they kept the dancing to 10 seconds? Because I know you like to just win the gold. So
fast dancing?
Yeah, like a fast dance.
Sounding better.
There you go.
Sounding better. Sounding more attractive. So at the Rio Paralympics, you came fourth in the PR1 sculls. And it's always said that, fourth is the worst position to come in. How do you feel about that? And did it fuel you for Tokyo?
We've been medaling in every competition for the 3 years before Tokyo. So that feeling of that fourth place was, in a way, a little bit devastating because there were so many that's been working so hard. And I felt like I let them down in a way, even though, I did as good as I could. So I was sitting there and watching the medal ceremony, and I just thought, I do not want to do another fourth place, in Tokyo. I want to win. And I want to do everything I can to win. I for sure don't want to be outside of the podium. And before Rio, I was like, oh, gold is really cool. And that's what's really, really cool. And then a bronze and a silver is okay. But, sitting there and watching and feeling the difference between a bronze and a fourth place was just, aha, okay. So it's a big difference. Is actually, medaling and not medaling. I see.
So talk about Tokyo. I mean, you won the gold there. Talk us through that experience of winning a gold medal in Tokyo.
All the factors that we thought these are going to be factors that are important, and we broke them down into working points, and we made out a plan, and I worked thoroughly with everything. Like, my life was such an Excel sheet. And I would say, I wasn't, it wasn't just my dream. I was obsessed. I was really obsessed with Tokyo. And the saying sentence in my head, that kept coming back to me was, I want to be on that starting line and know that I've done everything in my power, everything. I have all the abilities that I need to have to be able to win that race. It was quite absurd in a way. I can't really remember much of it, but we were on the starting pontoons and it was so hot, in Norway, it's not very warm. So competing in Tokyo in August, September, it's very different. It's very hot. It's very humid. The conditions are extremely different from what we train in usually at home. So for 4 years, I'd been training. For example, I've been training in one of these houses that you grow plants.
Greenhouse.
Greenhouse, yeah.
Greenhouses, thank you. We put up sporting gear in greenhouses and trained in there. We had sporting gear into the shower, and put on lots of ovens and heating and water just to be training in heat and humidity. We even built a heat chamber, and we did lots of testing and acclimatization there. So the level of preparations that we've done, I'd built totally new gear. My body was remade. Remember, just being there was not given. You could have been taken out. It was some kind of a crazy Squid game in the fact that, people were disappearing all the time because of positive COVID tests, So it was like, who can make it to the start line? And I remember so well, the morning, because we would deliver these COVID tests in the evening. And then in the morning, you'd get to know whether you were taken out or not. And I remember in the morning, I was like, we made it to the final. We made it. We're there, I'm able to do the final. And just that relief of knowing no one's going to come with a hook and drag me off the field of play.
Wow.
It was like, now it's only me, Until then, it was always something that could go wrong that I didn't control, but then it was just me.
So we're underway then in the PR1 Women's Single Sculls A final. Skarstein in lane 1 is the overwhelming favourite. There's an opportunity for some...
Everything was memorized. In my head, I had a game plan for the whole race. Every stroke was planned. And going down that field and just executing the plan and doing it and just feeling like I've done this before. I've been here before. This is just felt so familiar because I've done it so many times in my head and in my body, like my muscles just remembered what to do in that exact arena. And I knew, going through that, under that bridge, like, okay, now it's 6 strokes, which are a little bit different. And then I'm back to the other one. And then I could see the other athletes falling off one by one. They disappeared behind me. And the thing with rowing is that you're rowing with your back towards the finish line. So you can see what's going on behind you. You cannot see what's going on in front of you. So being in the lead gives you an overview of the field of play, which was also really absurd because I felt, look, now they're coming. And they don't. And at one point, I just realized if they're to catch up with me now, what they will deliver is just extreme. I'm leading with so much I can't, I'm never never seen anything like it. It was absurd, and it was in the Paralympic Games. So I felt like, okay, I just have to keep going then until the finish line. Don't turn the boat. Don't lose an oar.
Never mind. It is a brilliant gold medal for Birgit Skarstein of Norway, the winner in the PR1 women's single sculls. She was streets ahead. Way too good for the competition. Clear open water. She is the winner in the women's singles.
What a win for Norway's Birgit Skarstein. Fabulous.
Your coach said to you to die hard. Is that true?
Yeah.
And that's what you.
My coach said die hard.
And that
Die
sounds like you took it to heart.
It did. And crossing that finish line was just, it was a little bit absurd. It was like, we made it. And you know, usually when you cross a finish line, there's so much people. There's thousands of people cheering and flagging and making tremendous amounts of sound. And, you know, when you're in the competition, you kind of can't hear them because you're so focused on what you're doing. And then when you cross the finish line, it's just so much noise at once. And I crossed the finish line and it was just quiet. It was nothing, you know. And I hear one guy sitting in the stands going like,
Is that your coach?
No, it wasn't. He was crying.
That's fantastic. That's a great story.
So in Tokyo, there was no crowds. There was no friends. There was no family to support you and to cheer you on. And Paris is going to be completely different from that. It's going to basically be the first time we're going to have a crowd in the stands cheering us on since 2016, the Rio Games. Like, what's your thoughts on that? Like, does that make you like extra pumped, or do you like having maybe like not so many people watching?
I think it's going to be amazing, you know, because then we can share this experience together. And we can be in it together. And I think that one of the things with sports, which is so special, is that you're in the moment and you're there at the same time and you can really feel it and you're a part of it. And sport is very inclusive in the way that just by cheering for someone, you're a part of the game. And I think that some of the beauty with the sports is that we can, it's a huge community, right? And it unites people across so many borders. In a way, it feels like, however it turns out, you know, if we medal, then we're gonna celebrate together. If we don't, well, then just celebrate life. And I think that's gonna be also amazing.
I like to say about Paris that no matter what happens, whether I medal or not, it's the memories that I'll make at this games, because there will be my family there and friends to support me. So I feel like it's kind of the same with you.
So you said this. I think you said this is going to be your last Paralympics, and if so, what's going to be next for you after? What do you see for yourself next after this is over?
We'll see. There's lots of different options. I think it's going to be really cool. I'm excited for the next chapter. And I think, like you said earlier, that, you know, when I'm done, I'm done. Then I think I want to do something which is a little bit different. I'm not going to do bobsleigh.
We know that you have a grueling training schedule, and I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and being part of this. Thank you for what you are doing. Thank you for growing the Paralympic movement, and we appreciate your time for sure.
Absolutely. We enjoyed it, and good luck this summer. You'll have more people clapping for you here in Paris.
I'm so excited for the crowds.
That's all we got today on this episode of Rising Phoenix. What Does It Take? A podcast brought to you by the creators of the Emmy Award-winning show Rising Phoenix. Supported by global partners Adidas and Procter & Gamble, the proud makers of Oral-B, Pampers, and Gillette.
Be sure to like and subscribe. We've got lots of great content coming up and some fantastic guests. And
to find out more about Rising Phoenix, make sure you check out our show notes.
This is a Persophonica production in partnership with Harder Than You Think.
I'm a rising phoenix.